Shout out to Tokyo Treat and Sakura Co for sponsoring this video. Hello everyone! In this week's video, I'm going to redraw video game cutscenes in my style. So I was trying to brainstorm ideas for this week's video, and while doing this, I thought of my older series where I would redraw anime scenes in my style, and I thought it sounded fun to do that again. I was trying to think of what anime I'd want to redraw in my style, and as I was thinking, I was like, oh, what about Genshin Impact? And then I was like, wait, Genshin is a game, not an anime. But then I thought it might be fun to redraw video game cutscenes in my style. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I have a habit of taking screenshots on my Nintendo Switch when I'm playing video games. So I decided to look there first to find things for me to redraw. And I found this picture here. It is Zelda from The Legend of Zelda Skyward Sword HD. I really like the lighting because it's so pretty, so I wanted to try drawing it. So I'm starting out by sketching the pose. When I took this screenshot, I kind of caught Zelda when she was in the middle of moving from one pose to another. This seems to happen for me. I'll think, ooh, that's pretty, but then when I take the screenshot, it's a tad too late and then things end up being a little weird or not quite what I wanted to capture. Thankfully in this case it still looks pretty and I got to draw Zelda with some movement. So something that's a bit odd is that for some reason I always struggle a bit with drawing Skyward Sword Zelda. I'm not sure why. I think it might be that I try to draw the same facial proportions, but the proportions are different from how I usually draw my female characters. Or it's her hairstyle. I always have a hard time drawing blunt bangs that go all the way across. I don't know, it's just for some reason I always struggle a bit with Skyward Sword Zelda. Like right here, her face was looking very wonky, so I started over and tried again, and thankfully the second time it turned out pretty okay, and my sibling is stomping and I don't know if you can hear it. Also, it was a little bit funny. I kept feeling like I wanted to draw tears in Zelda's eyes and have her be crying because I felt like she was crying in the scene. But then when I look at her face in the screenshot, I didn't really see tears. But I decided to add the tears anyways because I wanted to add them and I thought it would help convey the emotion a little bit more. But then later I was looking more closely at the screenshot and I noticed a random sparkle floating to the left and I was like, oh, what's that? And then I went down a little bit and I saw the floating tears and I was like, aha, she was crying. So yeah, I'm glad I decided to follow my gut and added the tears. I didn't make them floating like in the screenshot because I always think floating tears don't really make sense. They do look kind of cool though, but I decided to just have mine be on the face. But yeah, I thought it was funny how I kept feeling like she should be crying, but I wasn't sure if she was, but it turns out she was. Okay, so we're going to be going on to the line art in just a moment, but I wanted to point out that I slightly changed Zelda's hairstyle just a little bit. I added these little bits that frame her eyes. I don't know, I just felt like her hair needed to frame her eyes a little bit, so I added those little strands. So yeah, I just thought I'd point it out so someone wouldn't be like, you drew her hair wrong, but I'd be like, well, that was on purpose because I wanted to add the little hair strands. So for the line art, I'm using the darker pencil brush. It has a little bit of texture, but not too much. I feel like I don't have a ton to say about the line art, so that's why we're kind of speeding through it. One thing is that I wish I would have sketched out her hair things a little bit more. Because I didn't plan them out a ton with my sketch, my line art for them was a little bit lazy. And this made me have to do more work later because they just didn't look quite right. I wish I would have sketched those out more. So after the line art, I filled in the colors and now I'm working on the background. The background is like a brick or rock kind of wall. I started by adding the lines for the bricks and giving them some highlights and shadows. I plan to blur the background out later, so I wasn't too worried about the details. I just kind of wanted to get the basic values in place and some kind of details. There is a section that has a pattern to it, so I kind of drew in a randomish pattern that sort of resembles the screenshot. It's kind of just a bunch of lines and dots and blobs and it doesn't make much sense. I added a rough texture to the entire background to add some variation in the color and so it wasn't so flat and it looked a little bit more natural. I also added a tile pattern to the larger areas to make them not feel so empty. And if you look in the screenshot, you can kind of see a slight tile pattern. Now I'm adding in the rays of light. For them, I use a mixture of yellow and white set to add glow. I love drawing rays of light, especially when I get to add little floating particles. I always think it just looks so pretty. So I make Zelda be in shadow by applying a light purple set to multiply all over her. She's going to be kind of top and backlit, so the light is above but also a bit behind her. So I'll have the light hit the top of her head, the top of her shoulders. I also thought about adding it to her nose. But I got rid of that later just because I felt like it was drawing a bit too much attention to that area. The nose was like, hey, look at me. And I wanted us to look at her eyes, not her nose. I feel like I've talked about Skyward Sword a few times in my videos, probably because I think I've drawn both Skyward Sword Link and Zelda in my videos before. But yeah, I really love Skyward Sword and the characters. I really loved playing the HD version for Switch, and it had a lot of good enhancements compared to the Wii version. The scene I'm redrawing is one of my favorite scenes, but it's also really sad. I won't spoil things, but yeah, it's sad, but I love the emotion you see between Link and Zelda and their facial expressions, and it's just so good. Right here was a little tricky. I was trying to shade around her eye area and add shadows. And I may have said this before, but with anime or manga type styles, it's always a balance of trying to define the planes of the face, but also not overly defining them where it just looks kind of weird. Because sometimes if you overly define the planes of the face, it almost looks like out of place or doesn't quite match. Like when I was young and I first started learning about the planes of the face and I tried to apply that knowledge to my art, it looked really weird and I just didn't know how to go about doing it. For the hair, I kept the shading pretty simple. I kind of liked the bigger, simpler shapes. It's kind of similar to the hair in the game, but I did add some little details here and there. One game I'm super excited to play is the sequel to the Breath of the Wild. I was a little bummed when we didn't see anything of it in the last Nintendo Direct. But I hope we get to see it at E3. I want to see more of the game so bad. From what I've seen, it looks really cool and I can't wait to play it. There are so many games coming out this year and I don't know if I'll be able to keep up with all of them. Like I'm still trying to beat the Pokédex in Legends Arceus, but the new Kirby game is coming out really soon. I only need like 20-ish more Pokemon to finish my Pokédex, so I am getting pretty close. But yeah, I'll have a hard time keeping up with all the games coming out this year. Oh, so here's where I'm fixing the hair thingies. I don't know what to call them. If you look at the hair things, it doesn't look like they're going around the hair, and they look like they're flat on the hair. So I was painting over to try to fix this and add more parts so that it looks like it's going around the hair. And I also had to add in more diamonds around one of the sides. I wanted it to look like the diamonds were denting in and the actual parts that were coming out were actually coming out and not just flat. So yeah, I didn't really get the proportions right for these. I made the triangles really big, but they should have been smaller, but it's okay. Lastly, we have the eyes. At first I was planning to make Zelda's eyelashes be a similar color to her hair, but to make them match the irises better, I made them a mixture of blue and black. It also helps them stand out a bit more because it has more contrast. Then we have all of the different highlights. Because she is crying, I wanted to make the irises look very wet and shiny, so I added a lot of different highlights. Speaking of crying, I'm now drawing in the tears. For them, I'm using white and drawing the outlines for the shapes of the tears. It kind of looks weird if I have the tears connect all the way up to the eyes, so I fade them out with a soft brush. And lastly, I feel like I said lastly already, but lastly, I add some bigger floating particles, do some finishing adjustments, and the picture is done. Here's the screenshot from the cutscene, and here's my redrawing of it. It was really fun drawing the scene in my style, and I really liked working with the lighting. It was a lot of fun, and I always really enjoy drawing Zelda characters. Shout out to Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for sponsoring this video. Tokyo Treat and Sakurako are both subscription boxes that share Japanese culture to the world through the medium of snacking. If you want to enjoy pop Japanese snacks, Tokyo Treat is for you. You'll get up to 20 of the latest, most exclusive, limited edition, and seasonal flavored Japanese snacks that are only available in Japan for a limited time, like Sakura Pepsi, Salt Lemon Kit Kats, and so many more. If you are looking for traditional Japanese treats, you'll enjoy Sakurako. You'll receive 20 traditional and authentic artisan Japanese snack items, including Japanese teas and one special Japanese tableware with your box every month. April's box features a really cute Sakura side plate. This is the one I got and I think it's so adorable. Sakurako helps with partnering with local Japanese snack makers to continue to share Japanese culture and traditions that have been passed down for over 100 years. If you're kind of confused by or don't really know what the snacks are, don't worry, each box comes with a booklet inside explaining every snack included in the box. There's also a lot of information on Japanese culture that you can learn from the booklets. April's boxes are Sakura themed. Tokyo Treat's theme is Supremely Sakura. Most of the snacks in the April box are limited edition snacks that are only available in Japan for this month. I absolutely love the peach Kit Kat and Fanta yogurt peach drink. They are both so yummy and have a lovely peach flavor. A treat I thought was really neat is the Trio Chozo Sakura Matcha. It is made with Kyoto's famous Uji matcha and elegant sakura flavor. These bite-sized chocolates have a tasty milk cream and marshmallow center. Sakurako's theme is Sakura Festival. Two of my favorite snacks from this box are the Nagano Apple Jam Bun and Sakura Daifuku. The Nagano Apple Jam Bun combines soft and moist dough with the aroma of Nagano Prefecture apple jam. It's so appley and yummy. I shared this one with my sisters and we all really liked it. Kumamoto-based maker Kimura boasts over 60 years of experience in making treats, and this incredibly smooth daifuku is a testimony to that. These are seriously so good. The mochi wrapping the anko bean paste is, I think, the best mochi I've ever had. The texture is just amazing and it's so soft. I highly recommend giving it a try if you like mochi. Tokyo Treat and Sakurako are so much fun and make great gifts. My family and I are actual customers and we always really love seeing the different foods and trying them together. And if you'd like to try the Japanese treats for yourself, use the code LOVE for $5 off your first Sakurako or Tokyo Treat box. Also, the box is always ordered in the preceding month. If you want to get one of the April boxes like I have, you need to order before March 31st. There are links in the description and pinned comment. Thank you so much again to Tokyo Treat and Sakurako for sponsoring this video. Okay, now let's get back to drawing. So next I'm going to redraw a cutscene from Genshin Impact, since it's what made me think to do this. There are many cutscenes in Genshin Impact, but the first cutscene that came to mind for me is the one where Kazuha is clashing swords with the Raiden Shogun. It's such a cool scene. So I knew this redraw would be a bit of a challenge for me, mostly because the pose is one I've never really drawn before. I don't really draw actiony fighty poses. Also, Kazuha's outfit is very detailed, so I knew I would need to draw all those little details. And plus there's also the background. So yeah, I knew it was going to be a little bit of work. And by a little, I mean quite a lot. As you can see, I'm sketching with the scene above my sketch in the same canvas. I was doing this to help me get things placed properly and try to get the proportions similar. The way I draw my character's anatomy and the way it is stylized in Genshin are different, so it was interesting trying to translate things between the two. Thankfully Kazuha's face didn't give me too much trouble. It was fun drawing his angry expression. One thing I've been playing around with in my art recently is adding wrinkles or expression lines. I found that they can really help push the expressions and help them to feel more dramatic or expressive. I've especially been doing it in my webcomic. Also, many of you have been asking when I'm posting the next chapter of my webcomic, and I'm hoping to post it towards the end of March. Sorry about the long wait, and thank you for your patience. Kazuha's hair did give me a little bit of trouble. I was trying to draw the larger chunks of hair like his 3D model, but I also wanted to break it up into smaller strands, so I was trying to figure out how I wanted to go about doing that. I've drawn Kazuha a handful of times, but I definitely don't have his design memorized. This can make things a bit tricky because I have to keep finding different pictures to try to figure out how things look, and it's just a little bit more confusing than drawing a character I have memorized. But I also want to make sure I'm getting all the details correct. So I had to redraw his body multiple times. This was my last attempt. When I got to this one, I was like, who cares? It's gonna probably get covered up by the swords and the clothing and stuff anyways. So I give up. I'm just gonna go with this. And I was right. A lot of the foreshortened arm that I was having issues with gets blocked by the swords and his loose clothing. So it didn't matter too much, but I was glad I was able to get it to a place where I felt like it was pretty okay and the anatomy didn't look super weird. So now we're on to the line art. Honestly, I should have done another cleanup sketch. My sketch was pretty rough, and this made the line art process take a bit longer, but I also didn't have to do a second cleanup sketch, so maybe it balanced out. But if I had done a second cleanup sketch, it definitely would have been easier to do the line art. Kazuha is one of my favorite characters. I actually have him on my team in Genshin, and he's super helpful for getting all the mobs to come to me. So it's a lot easier to beat them. I remember when I first got Kazuha, I was like, how have I been fighting before I got him? I pretty much always have him on my team because if I don't, fighting is so much more tedious. Because I have to run around to each mob and try to beat them compared to just making them all come to me. The only time he's not on my team is when I need to fight the wind boss thingy. I can't remember the name of it at the moment. Kazuha doesn't really help with those, so Barbara gets substituted in. Oh, so for the lines of the background, I placed a perspective ruler and I used it as a guide for drawing in the background. The trickiest part was the stairs. I never liked drawing stairs, but I've had to draw them a few different times for my webcomic, so I've kind of gotten an idea of how to draw them. I noticed that all my lines actually didn't line up with the perspective of Kazuha, so I tried turning my background a bit to make it line up with him more, and it seemed to work, I think. It can always be a bit tricky to line up your background perspective with your character perspective, and it can take a bit of tweaking. So now it's time for coloring. Like with the Zelda picture, I'm going to get the lighting and background into place first. So I'm starting with the spark of light where the swords hit. I made a circle of light and then kind of just added a bunch of pointy lines and particles flowing from it. I also blurred it out a little bit so it feels just a tish softer and has a little bit more of a blurry glow to it. For the background, I kept things pretty simple and kind of just added shading to define the forms of things a bit. So I added highlights and shadows where I felt like were needed and drew lines for the bricks. Like with the Zelda background, this will be blurred out, so I didn't care if it was a bit messy. As long as it gets the idea across, I'm happy. So for the lighting, I really wanted to emphasize the purple. I apply a dark purple to Kazuha. Then on a layer over that, I added highlights for where the bright spark lighting is hitting. I do this over the multiply layer because if I did it under it, the highlights wouldn't look super strong. The only hard part about doing this is that I can't clip my highlights to the individual parts, like just the hair or just the skin, because I'm clipping to my entire Kazuha folder, so I have to keep cleaning the highlights up as I go. Like I mentioned, this is the first cutscene I thought of when I was deciding which Genshin cutscene I wanted to redraw. However, I did consider redrawing a scene from the update that focused on Albedo because the cutscenes in that were really cool. But I've drawn Albedo pretty recently, so I thought it'd be fun to draw Kazuha. Plus, like I mentioned, this cutscene is just so cool. Oh, also, something I wanted to mention is that I'm now on TikTok. My mom kept telling me I should make one, so I finally gave in and made one. I've been posting some videos and speed drawings on there. I am Love to Draw Manga Official because someone took Love to Draw Manga. Who stole my username? But yeah, you can follow me on there if you want. Also, because now I'm on TikTok, I see all the TikTok art hacks and art ideas, so I'm thinking of maybe doing a video on that. If you have any art-related TikTok ideas or trends, please tell me about them in the comments. I'm a TikTok noob, so I don't really know how to find everything or what's trending, so it'd be nice if you guys could tell me what's trending so I can find it. One thing I did kind of mess up for my redraw is the perspective. In the original, Kazuha is more turned and the camera is a bit more zoomed in. And for my version, we are looking a bit more straight on at him and we're a bit more zoomed out. So yeah, the perspective ended up being a bit different, but I feel like it still captures the overall feeling of the scene, so that's good. Something I almost forgot to add is the kind of misty, smoky, purpley stuff coming from the swords. For this, I started by adding a texture that looked kind of particle-y, and then I draw in some purple and tried to shape it in a kind of smoky shape. This part was actually really fun. I liked drawing the shape and kind of blending it out and erasing until it kind of felt okay. And after some finishing touches, here is the final result. So here's the cutscene, and here's my redraw. I feel like I went a little crazy with the purple lighting, but it was a lot of fun. Doing these cutscene redraws was definitely a learning experience. It encouraged me to draw backgrounds, different poses, and different lighting. If you all enjoyed this video, I would definitely want to do this again sometime. And if there are any video game cutscenes you'd like to see in my style, please let me know down in the comments. Before we end, I want to thank my super amazing patrons for supporting my work and what I do. It means so much to me. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you all next week in my next video. Bye!